Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Guns of Navarone, RMP, Troy Shuka, Bose Nail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Dal West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick, Abraham Mohammed, Dave Rakia Gafford, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Fireball X, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, Alexander Main, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'm going to raise the mic on whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
No, I'm saying we're 1 day back at work and we might put on to full lockdown tonight. Literally just got back to work today. Like,
Yeah, I heard. Amazing.
Just love it. Well, at least I got my garden growing at the back there, so I'm sorted.
Good. You laid down good roots, I take it.
Very deep. Till the Earth's core.
To the Earth's core. Oh, that's funny. You went further than 8 miles.
Yeah, well, I needed magnetic wasts. Magnetic force to grow it properly.
Oh, I see.
You know, it has to keep on to that molten core, otherwise it will get thrown off the spinning Earth.
That's right. You gotta have that molten iron salad made of the right stuff. You compensate for the spin with the molten iron magnetic.
See, everything's linked.
Yeah, everything's linked. Well done.
I don't want to pick on the Globers too much. It's hard to figure out, that it's a shell game they play with you like that. About.
I thought you were punning there, John, when you said pick on the Globers.
Oh no, it's really a hard religion to see out of. You know what I mean?
No, I got you.
Yeah, it's like having a blind faith but you can see, but you can't believe what you're seeing while you're blind.
They can't even give us a measured response.
Yeah, I like that question they have over in 24/7 Discord about, can you show a measurement of the curvature, and they fall apart.
Yeah, now they say you can't measure it, you can only calculate it.
If you can't measure it, it don't exist.
Exactly.
Physically. Yeah. If it's physical, you got to be able to measure it.
Well, they know. When I looked up the California commission that had the jurisdiction over the oil rigs, Habitat and Platform, those 2 platforms out there, they measured those out exactly the distances from the shore.
Yeah, exactly. It's actual measurements.
And the horizon is beyond those.
Even the Glober told me today, how are they gonna go out and actually walk thousands of miles and measure? I said, what do surveyors do every day? The surveyors don't actually measure anything anymore?
Oh, I thought you were going to say they walk thousands of miles.
Hopefully with Earth curve.
That'd be one tired surveyor.
Imagine carrying your theologite everywhere around. What you doing? No, I'm
that's my staff. Yeah, it's kind of silly to say the two platforms which are measured give us a marker. The horizon should be in front of both of them, but it's behind it. What do they say?
But the problem is they don't like to, how can I say, they like to obfuscate from the point of the horizon being behind the platform. So they try and put your attention to the platform.
Yeah,
so the more you say horizon, the more they say platform.
Yeah, they want to go with the thermal imaging and all that kind of junk when we're talking about the horizon.
I mean, don't put the platforms in. You don't have a reference, and they're saying you're lying. You're about your distance. Then you put a reference in, and then they say, and they try and work on their reference and not what you're trying to show.
I don't think they have a well-oiled argument at the end.
They're just burning it up.
That's it. Every time they talk. So they didn't like what you posted there, John, over there in 24/7, the ballers?
Oh, no, I was arguing with them. It wasn't ballers. It was flat earthers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, tell us more. Tell us more.
I hate arguing with. If there would have been a baller in there, I would never open my mouth. But the claim that we live in a physical and natural world is an incomplete statement. Therefore, it's not a true statement. You know, it's only a half truth. Because the horizon isn't physical, but we all perceive it.
Correct.
So that means it's something else.
But John, you would agree you would need something physical to be able to have the parent horizon, correct?
Right, I said it's an incomplete statement. Like, I ain't saying the physical doesn't exist. I'm just saying that it's not the only thing that does. And they were arguing with me.
Yeah, but I see the guys on 24/7 have kind of a mindset on their answers and stuff.
But, you know, I'm fine arguing within the physical, but the horizon is not that.
Well, if they want to argue within the physical, then they must accept that the oil platforms are those distances, and the horizon, which isn't that, is behind it.
Yeah, that it wasn't what the shape of the Earth argument was. It was an ether argument.
We're back to that again?
Oh, it ain't never going to go away.
So it's like I say, you say kind of thing.
I guess it's hard for me to even put my finger on it because I don't have anything else to point to but the horizon, because it doesn't fit into the description of what we get physical.
Well, it's a matter of perspective on the physical.
Yeah. Look, if you had a geometric physical shape, your horizon would have to be dictated by that physical shape. But if you have a flat physical shape, your horizon will always be optical because it won't be dictated by that shape.
Physical geometric, correct. I was waiting for one of you to get there. I thought one of you, I was got to get there eventually. It's physical in the respect that you're seeing part of the land and where it appears to meet the sky. Now that bit's the apparent bit. Doesn't actually meet the sky. It's apparent location. But the bit of land, you could say, well, that's physical. Yeah, it is. But what they require is physical geometric, i.e. a line drawn to a tangent point on a sphere. That's physical geometric. You got there in the end.
Well, math isn't my best.
What I win?
Well, that's your
£1
favorite
million.
subject. Math, it isn't mine.
They don't win anything.
You don't win anything.
What are we winning?
Nothing physical.
I apparently won something.
So we're winning something geometrically?
No, at this point, the Globers can't even enter the argument. You know what I mean? Like they're out. They're disproven.
Yeah, that's correct. I was trying to say that to the people in the chat over the weekend. A lot of them were getting quite aggressive with the globe heads that came in, trolling. I was like, it's more interesting to me that there's a very key split now. There's a greater proportion of flat earthers in the chat, marking their territory, so to speak, than there is globehead trolls. Now, obviously, there's an ebb and flow to these things, so it's not like that's going to stay consistent. But by the same token, it's the case that our side's won. You know, there isn't any rebuttal anymore. We've had a full year of it. There isn't ever going to be a black swan rebuttal. And there isn't ever going to be a second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum rebuttal either. And they're never going to show that stuff drifts underneath. It doesn't. They argue for why it doesn't. So it's game over in the truest sense of the word. So when you say, well, they've got nothing to come here with, that's true. That really is true. What we'll get from here on in, as far as I'm concerned, is people who are uninitiated. Yeah, uninitiated. And they stumble across the show for whatever reason. You know, the die-hard fundies might occasionally come. But on the whole, they know what happens when they get here, and all they can do is moan about it.
Indeed.
Yeah, their favorite word, fundy mute.
So should I let Mind Warped in, given that every time he comes in, he rumpuses the G Plus hangout? Take a vote on it. Should I let Mind Warped in?
Must say, I missed you guys these 3 weeks. Yeah. Crazy without the live show.
That doesn't answer my question.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Maybe you should have a private talk with him first, since that kept happening and it's your show. So,
well, that's it. I 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before a live show starts, I don't want to have a conversation with him about him completely rumpusing.
Well, not today.
G Plus hangout.
Not today, but just text him and say, "Hey, let's talk about it after the show today and see where you're at."
Yeah.
He said he was going to get some help, so maybe he's okay. Maybe he's not. I don't know.
Yeah.
He says he's trying to get in.
Yeah, I see that. That's what I'm asking.
I want to see it. I want to see it.
Not with 5 minutes. I don't. I think Nathan needs to debrief first. This happened too many times.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm hesitant. It's like once maybe it's just having a bad day or whatever. If it keeps happening, I'll have a word with him and I'll let him in on the next show.
Yeah, perfect.
Before now,
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, Mitch is a nice guy. You should understand.
Yeah. That'd be good to have him back.
Just let him in then.
All this for what?
Hey, Mitch, how's it going? Mitch
Hello.
here.
Can you hear us?
How's it, mate?
Okie dokie then. Can you hear us, Mitch?
Hey, Mitch. Earth to Mitchell.
Anyway. Where were we? Yeah, they've got
We were
nothing to
talking
come back.
about the ballers coming in. They have no argument.
We're talking how physical a parent has to be.
Yeah.
Am I coming through?
You are now, yes. Please, please, please don't rumpus the hangout this time. Like the last 2 times you've been here, you've rumpus the hangout. And I can't control that.
All good. Under control.
Excellent.
It's good to have you
And I
back,
do
Mind.
apologize. Thanks, thanks.
Hey, Mind Warp.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, good.
Happy New Year, everyone. Hope it's a good year for you all.
We'll see.
Yeah, happy 2035.
2035.
Happy middle of winter. Because, of course, it's on you.
Yeah. Gotta wait till spring for the new year.
Frankly, I don't care what year it is. Every day is just a new day.
Well, once you got your garden in the back going, it don't matter.
Yeah, all that magnetic forces. Yeah.
So let's go back to the ballers having no argument after 1 year of the Black Swan.
Yeah, it's all over, but for the crying.
Yeah.
What is there to talk about then?
Well, it's just nice to summarize when they come in here? And I remember they pulled a citation, and we read the citation, and it says exactly what we said, where the sky meets the land, the apparent location. It's now real. And they're pulling the same citation we would. I mean, it's a backed our argument every time when they did it.
Yeah, it's so great when they bring up something that says done on a flat Earth.
Oh, Andrew
Thomas Young says all of it was done on the plane. So yeah, everything's done on a flat Earth.
They're playing a trick with words pretty much because they want to use refraction to refract geometry to create the horizon. But that doesn't work.
Yeah, precisely.
The model was built geometrically.
Yeah, it's a paradox at that point. To derive the refraction you're describing, which would be terrestrial refraction, which includes an R value, then you need to be able to measure an R value. And they get the measurement of the R value from the geometric horizon. That's a straight line to the horizon with it assumed to be a tangent point on a sphere. As soon as you start bending that line and saying it's refracted with an R value, not with actual refraction, with their bait and switch refraction that uses R, well, you need R. You can't get R, so you can't move the horizon with R if moving the horizon means you can't measure it anymore.
Dead on arrival?
Indeed.
So, your globiolis got a lot of talk here.
Brian's just joined, actually. Speaking of globiolis.
Hey, Nathan. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian. Great video last one, dude.
Yeah, very good video.
Yeah, well, it needs to be pointed out more and more to them that their claims are completely wrong. So,
I was delighted that you'd furthered that because as it got discussed with Arwin, because Arwin's like, no, I want to call it Nathanian Coriolis effect. It's like, no. The whole point of this is to distinguish where they say Coriolis, but they actually describe something that is not Coriolis effect. So that needs a label to divide up the confusion so that people actually understand what's being described.
yeah, I absolutely, totally agree with you because the globiolis is perfect for the people and for the claim because it sounds so silly and so stupid, and it's obviously not the word Coriolis. So you're not just distinguishing between the two, you're also giving them and their claim the name it deserves.
Indeed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so when you're having a conversation back and forth, as long as we can be disciplined enough to actually say globiolis when we're describing them talking about the conservation of angular momentum and a minor or partial hijacking of what they call Coriolis effect, as long as we can consistently identify it as that and then consistently detail what Coriolis actually is, i.e. not actual deflection observed from a non-inertial spinning reference frame as you're attached to it, observing something that's not attached to that spinning reference frame. That's Coriolis effect. As long as we can consistently detail what Coriolis actually is, and therefore at the end in summation say, therefore if we have Coriolis, Earth is turning under things not attached, because that's what Coriolis is, rather than saying, well, in Coriolis it wouldn't retain the angular momentum. It's like, that's not Coriolis. So let's say, no, in globiolis, you describe things retaining angular momentum. Well, angular is the speed that it rotates at however many radians, not in a mile per hour speed variant that you're going to give, because you're talking about it retaining its rotational angular momentum. Well,
Velocity.
So when they're talking about globiolis, we'll define it as such, because we're no longer talking about Coriolis. If we call it Coriolis when we're detailing them talking about things retaining 1,000 miles an hour on the equator when they leave a spinning claim to be platform that they're assuming, when we detail that, we'll call that what it is, globiolis, so that the audience can distinguish between the two things. The lie, their hijacking partially of Coriolis, and their attribution of the, what is it again? Angular resolution. What is it again? The angular velocity retention?
The conservation of angular momentum.
There it is. Conservation of angular momentum. When they claim that, we'll point it out as globiolis.
Yeah, but the thing about it is they're not even claiming. They're claiming the conservation of angular momentum. But I got a little link off of Glober on your channel off the video you did yesterday for me, and this is exactly what they're claiming. They're claiming a linear velocity because of the two different distances between the equator and wherever else north or south of the globe. So it's actually a linear velocity, and they're trying to turn that into a conservation of angular momentum, where something is moving at two different linear velocities. There's no linear on the globe, with the exception of the equator line, if you were to walk right around it in accordance with their model and their beliefs like gravity. I mean, there is no other linear. It's just 1 second. This guy, he sent me a link, and this link absolutely disproves and debunks exactly what they're saying within the very thing they're trying to say. I'll show it to you later. It's just a little interactive thing. I'll show it on the show later. Sorry, Flatside.
Yeah,
I mean, like you were saying, how long would you be able to conserve momentum anyway?
Exactly. It's not a continual thing. It's a momentary thing.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Brian's Logic, Father of a Stolen Child, Flatsoid, Mind Warped, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So, welcome, one and all.
Hey, everybody.
Howdy doody.
Howdy doody. Okay. Howdy doody to you too.
Good evening.
Good evening, welcome, good morning, wherever you may be. Any evidence of a physical, geometric, sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
I'm sure it hasn't been physical for at least a year now.
Yeah, exactly. It hasn't been since 1st Jan 2020. Over a year. No physical horizon. Game over,
It hasn't
globe.
been physical at any time.
Indeed. It's an apparent location where the sky seems to meet the ground. It doesn't actually meet the ground, it's an apparent location. Arwin joining after the intro, because I intentionally started early just to stop that happening. Hey, Arwin.
Yeah,
But I'm not going to get caught out by Arwin joining in my intro, putting me off again. I'll get him to join on time, which is when I'm doing my intro normally, so I'll start a minute early. That won't happen.
Nathan,
Hello,
are
Arwin.
you bending time?
Bending time by starting early a minute, yeah.
Yeah, and I kept on going a little longer. I was caught up in responding to a troll in my chat, and it was kind of funny.
Fair enough. We're only one housekeeping question down, so any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Would you not need physicality to have that axial rotation?
You'd need to be on a rotating platform.
Which is physical.
physically rotating. That's what they claim. Yeah, they claim Earth spinning. That's right.
So we don't have rotation, we don't have physicality, so we don't have a globe.
Hey, by the way, guys, isn't that kind of funny, the idea that if the Earth were rotating across the equator, basically, which is what the ball supposedly says it is, then if you would unfold it like the map, then technically, yeah, the entire disk Earth presupposedly would also be rotating like a roundabout. Except there would be more centripetal effects at the south and less at the north. But yeah, there isn't any, though.
Sorry, but Arwen, we're not a disk floating in space.
One sec, Flatsides. So what you're saying,
Arwen,
is...
I didn't even mention space.
Hold on. Just let me get clarity of what you're saying. Fleeting comment, I'm sure, but there we go. Just so the audience understands what you're saying. You're saying that when you take the projection of a sphere Earth and flatten it out, as in something like the azimuth equidistant projection, what you'd end up with is a rim velocity on the outside edge of that pancake that was considerably larger than the current rim velocity at the equator, because it's opened out further, giving you a greater distance from centre and therefore a greater rim velocity. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And I'm not making any statement with that is a reality. I'm just playing in my mind with it.
The reason I sort of highlight it or go over it again, reiterate it, that's the word, is because on the Vsauce video from many years ago, it's probably about 6 years old now, maybe 5 years old now, he describes exactly that, how gravity would work on a flat plane and how you'd have a force that was increasing as you went to the outside edge of it. You're like, how, now that you've mentioned it, how is it that this isn't applicable to a globe, but it is applicable to a pancake? Why is it suddenly the forces of non-forces that you can think of as forces when pseudo-Ramonian force space get bent, why are they suddenly an issue when you flatten out that pancake, but nobody feels a damn thing when it's on a sphere Earth? What, because it's halved? Or not, it'd probably be far less than half, but you know what I'm saying? When it's less at the equator, so what? You'd still feel it, right? 1,000 miles an hour rim velocity.
Yeah, well, Nathan, the difference is the globe believers have a belief in their globe. Nobody believes in a pancake. A spinning pancake.
So they're just being protective with against the same arguments for their globe, but they will be happy applied to the supposed flat Earth disk model.
Well, they're happy to criticise the same effect on a flat Earth disk model, but it's just no issue when it comes to a sphere Earth model when they've got a not actual force. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't think.
Just zealotry. It's just zealotry.
I don't think their arguments stack up flat.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No evidence for a distance to the sun.
I'm going to bring up a point that Bo brought up in a chat over the weekend. So he's been making observations of Jupiter and Saturn, which are in close or have been in close proximity. Shout out to Desmond for joining as a penguin. And based on what he was explaining to me in the chat, something clicked that I'm sure will now click for all of you as well. The movement of the stars based on their distances in astronomical terms, when presupposing a sphere Earth and presupposing Venus as the same assumed R value as Earth and applying Kepler's third law to give you the distances. When you have those astronomical distances, based on the mechanics of Earth turning, we would, throughout the night, see parallax. Now, the only movement occurs the following day. So if you take into consideration something like a wandering star, right? What happens? Well, when you draw out the dots and join them together after a few nights, you can see that its position relative to the other stars would move backwards, but only in reference to the previous night, and its position relative to the stars the previous night. But throughout the night, there's no parallax. Now, I won't go into massive amounts of detail because he sent me a whole bunch of information via an email, which I picked up on this morning, but haven't actually had a chance to go through yet. But when he said it to me, I thought, you're right. There isn't any movement throughout the night, and you can all picture a time lapse, right? Where's the parallax? Based on the distances, there should be some. So BLMSB69's channel has got, as far as I'm aware, because I think he sent me the link to it, although I've not yet seen it, one of these time lapses with Saturn and I think it was Jupiter in close proximity throughout a time lapse without parallax. Now, I did ask him, I'm like, why not just a planet versus any star? He was like, well, because they're in a similar trajectory and the distances between them are quite big and etc. He did give me an explanation, but I didn't fully understand why the parallax wouldn't be more extreme with something more distant. But nevertheless, I'll take him at his word, and he said it was a better example to use these two wandering stars or planets to detail this lack of parallax. That said, we've all seen stars move through the time-lapse motions, right? So I'm sure at this point you're all going, you're right, where's the parallax? Throughout a period of nighttime, not the following day, where's the parallax? Well, the answer is there isn't any.
Well, if you actually think about it and stars move independently of one another, you wouldn't expect to see it because they move in their own cycles how they move. But to the globe, you need a parallax, and it's not there, so you're right.
There isn't any.
It's only showing... Sorry.
No, go on.
Yeah, I just agreeing with you there. You only see it the next night. Like if you record the positions, you only see it the next night and the night after that and the night after that. You don't see anything on that night while you're watching it.
No, they're just
you
all
can't
moving.
See anything that you should see.
They're all synchronous, right?
Yeah, it all does exactly. It's just like moves like a clock.
Not possible if they're at different distances. Simply not possible.
No, not possible.
Correct. Essentially debunking any claim of these astronomical distances and their variation based on the fact that there isn't any parallax. No parallax? Game over.
So are you saying the ratios are wrong?
Not the ratios. What? You can only see the ratios with parallax. Oh, well, that one's at this vast distance and this one's closer. Therefore, as we turn, one looks like it's moving faster than the other. Like if you're on a train and you've got the platform going by with mountains behind it. They both move at different distances, at different speeds, apparent to your trajectory or your vector. So the platform will whiz on by as the mountains don't seem to move at all in the far distance. Things in the foreground somewhere in between. Well, the same would be applicable to the stars throughout the night, as we're claimed to rotate underneath them. Well, that means we're the one with the train vector moving past stuff, some far, some near. Ergo, there must be parallax. There isn't.
It should be a new housekeeping question.
Go on.
Any visible signs of parallax in the night sky?
It may very well get added. When he said this to me, I thought this is worthy of housekeeping. This is awesome. Obviously, I'm going to check out his emails. I've not even read it yet. But when he detailed it quite concisely and accurately and to the best of his ability in the chat on one of the Uncut and After shows. So, big shout out to him. Is it BLMSB or is it BMLSB? I always get it the wrong way around.
I think it's BLM.
Yeah, BLM, yeah. BLMSB.
Big shout out to BLMSB69. That's Bo's channel. Check it out. He is also the originator of the black swan image used to make the Modus Tollens example. So, massive shout out to Bo. And thank you very much for passing on this information. Epic. It's one of those that you go, how didn't I think of that? Absolutely awesome. Excuse me.
Well, I think in heliocentrism, they have a positive calculation for parallax between the movements, the slight discrepancies within the star movements, but they only calculate positive parallax. They ignore negative, where it returns to its previous position.
Oh, I see. So what they're saying is if there's a minor deviation in something that potentially could have caused that to happen with a bit of, I don't know, hot air between you and it, well, that would cause the parallax in the one direction. But if it returns, that's ignored.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of accounted for, but then it's ignored as well.
Flat side, you're off mute.
Yeah, you're causing a bit of a
Yeah,
racket.
sorry, I realised that.
It's okay. So, yeah, it's nice to have a relatively recent, well-versed ex-Globehead on the panel, John. Already hearing the rebuttals, right? So this has clearly been put forth before and just been shot down.
But yeah, they say that they account for parallax and they measure parallax, but when it's found that there was a negative parallax, they just dismiss the observation.
This argument is around a few years, but it's kind of one of those things that it's not until now, probably right now today, is actually really seeing the light of day, because I've heard Globebusters and others speak about it, and I do remember, I think it was Mark Sargent or someone speaking about it when I first heard it years ago. Maybe it could have been Jaron Campanella. But it's around a good couple of years, but like all those other things, just like the argument about the horizon with the black swan, we were so involved in so many other arguments trying to deal with other ones that we deemed more what's the word, had more priority. We never got around to this. But now we are at a point where we can now look at this without having to worry about those other arguments. If you know what I mean.
Nathan has, well, the much younger Nathan Oakley has a show on Parallax. I watched it. One of the earlier shows, Nathan, where you were on a train, not like a train going through well, maybe it was a train going through the country, but it was a train either in the city or the country, and you were talking all about parallax, and you were pointing out your window to objects. Do you remember that?
Yes, but by the same token, it's not. I may have made this argument myself. That's not the point. My point is, it takes someone like Bo to say, here's two planets without parallax. The argument is as follows, and then just lay it out. And keep it concise. What I'm saying is that, like the Black Swan, plenty of people, having looked at this after the fact, right, I went back and found a few other videos that had black swans in them, and they had the most thumbs down I've ever seen. Disproportionately high thumbs down on black swans before it was the Black Swan. And you go, oh, yeah, that's interesting, eh? When someone comes and shows the horizon beyond a physical geometric capability of being somewhere, and they make a little argument about it, won't necessarily be modus tollens, but they point it out that it's not possible. That gets the most negative feedback from the globe side. Yeah, that's why, right? And I'm sure if we went back after the fact, once this has been polished up and presented a bit better, we'll go back and say, oh, look, here's a few people pointing out parallax, the lack thereof, and it's got a very negative reception. I don't doubt it.
Yeah, absolutely. With the whole Black Swan thing, the J. Tolan Media's famous observation from Point Dume in Malibu to Mount San Jacinto, he should have had an horizon 15.25 miles away from him. But he didn't. He had Santa Monica Beach just over 19 miles away, and Los Angeles, and everything else all the way to Mount San Jacinto. And they did everything they could. And if you look at their supposed debunks of that, because I did a presentation on it and I pulled their debunks apart, they did everything they could. They lied everything just to get rid of that. And the main problem was the horizon. And I have to admit, when I was the question I asked them, when I was just debating guys in comments on YouTube videos, I asked every one of them, I says, where is the horizon? If things are gone over a curve, where is the horizon? This should be there. And every one of them, no matter who they were in the ball or fraternity at the time, they all disappeared. None of them would answer it. They just disappeared. They wouldn't argue any further.
Exactly. And the same thing happened during the Isle of Man. And it was, where's the bulge? Now, the bulge in their Earth curve maths is the horizon. But we hadn't identified it, and we were asking them, including Rumpus, well, where's the bulge? Where's the hill between us and the target? And there was just lots of stunned silences and no answers to it. And at the time, I had no idea why. Why is this being met with stunned silence when I ask where the bulge is? Well, it's because that's their physical reified Earth curve edge horizon that's not visible. It's not capable of being measured. It's not capable of being seen. It's a not actual location. They've reified into a sphere edge by way of claiming you can draw a tangent point to it. Now, that's nice and easy to summarise in 2021. 2016, you're like, where's the bulge? No reply. Well, why aren't they replying?
Exactly.
What's going on?
Well, I have a physical bulge.
Stop. The South Africans.
We're not going to have Flatsoid. We're not going to have Flatsoid. We're not going to have the battle of the bulges. Okay, come on.
Far more clean of a joke. Excellent work, 10th man.
because Italians would win.
Has anybody got anything to add on?
Hang on, you can patent
Let's back up with that.
Everyone calm down. Hold on. Has anybody got anything to add on distance to the sun or parallax?
Well, I think just about parallax, I think that we should definitely focus more on that because they're always claiming stuff to do with the sky, which is all wrong anyway. Because I'm going to say this now, and I don't know if it'll be taken in, but it will become important in time. Their globe, their north and their south, are out of alignment with Polaris and Sigma Octantis by 3/4 of a degree at each end. So. Just to clarify why I said that is that they're always talking about the sky as if their globe perfectly fits it, and it doesn't fit it at all. So I think we should attack parallax because they're always trying to attack us with this nonsense for 6 years.
Yeah, just think what chaos there would be if there was no parallax, which, well, there isn't parallax if they needed it. I mean, the stars wouldn't be where they are every time they say they would be.
Well, isn't parallax based on a presuppositional vantage point in the first place? Namely, that they are physical things in Euclidean space.
Yeah, it's based on Kepler's third law, giving them all the distances and variants of the maths, based on Earth being a sphere with a radius of 3959 and Venus having the same radius as Earth. And then they just apply Kepler's third law. That gives them all of the distances.
Radius?
Yeah, radius, yeah, we debunk that. I mean, ultimately speaking, this falls under the category of it's automatically debunked by the black swan. So it is kind of surplus to requirements. If anybody was to assert the distance to any of the stars, where are you getting your R value? You're assuming radius is the same in Venus as it is in Earth, and you've assumed the radius of Earth, and we've debunked your assumption based on, what, a measurement of the horizon being physical by Al-Biruni to derive R, to move R, with R, when you can't measure it anymore? Yeah, that's a screwed argument, so you're not going to be applying Kepler's third law. You're certainly not going to be assuming Venus has the same radius as Earth. You're certainly not going to be assuming Earth's got a radius. And you're certainly not going to be assuming Earth's a sphere based on having a physical geometric sphere for a horizon. You haven't. So that's all game over. That's kind of convoluted. Whereas if you just say there's no parallax, that's kind of the end of that, right? In terms of distances to these celestial bodies. There's no parallax.
Yeah, I say put it into housekeeping.
I think one of the rebuttals to this is if the Earth is flat, then how are these things that we thought we knew how are they possible? We thought we know them.
Are you reverting to a baller that's got the cognitive problem of not being able to relinquish one paradigm unless he's got another to replace it?
Yes.
My bad.
That's yeah. I was saying that was my favorite response to what we're saying.
Well, I like to respond that as follows. Oh, so you've got questions now. Now your argument's been defeated. You got questions. Like, what is the sky made of? Yeah, join the club. Yeah, so many questions when you realise that this massive lie about what the sky is suddenly leaves you with no answers. Suddenly you wonder what the sky is, but you ask me what the sky is. Suddenly I'm your authority, am I? Well, join the club. We've all got questions now. But why are you asking me them? I've just pointed out that your paradigm's wrong. It doesn't mean I have to give you an answer about what the sky is. I know we have containment because we wouldn't have gas pressure. And what's the reply to that? What's your proof? Where's your proof of the sky vacuum not being real? Well, second law of thermodynamics. Well, where's your container? Where's your proof? Well, we've got gas pressure. There's your proof. Without it, we wouldn't have any gas pressure. We need containment. So we've got to have containment. What it is, I have no idea. Why you'd ask me is irrelevant because we've proved where your belief in a sky vacuum, might as well ask this housekeeping question. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure, that's the stuff we're all breathing, yummy, yummy, yum, gas pressure, without a container for it to press upon.
Only on Globetardia.
Where they suffer from colobiolis.
And are all infected with the Coriolis virus.
Remember the good old days when the ballers would come in and just say, just walk outside.
Yeah, just walk outside and beg the question with me. Beg the question that the sky is a vacuum, and my special pleading fallacy about it being a vacuum is absolutely true because I can point at it and assert that the sky is a vacuum and the gas isn't filling it. Therefore, beg the question with me, and you too will have a fundamentalist religious belief that there's a sky vacuum in violation of the second law of thermodynamics.
I just love how they point to us. Look, no containment, but show us demonstration with containment.
What's that you say? You need to see a demonstration of gas pressure without a container? Well, how's this? I'll show you 2 containers to demonstrate gas pressure without a container. And evidence
now they throw bouncy balls down and say that's gas.
Oh,
Right,
what?
it's like a magician's trick, but they're literally with the trick tricking themselves. They're just erasing the idea of the container within the apparatus and just like imagining how it is there without a container, and that's their proof.
Exactly. They're lying to themselves. You know, the ones that assert so doggedly that they're here because Flat Earth's dead. It's like, why are you here then? Go in peace, man. If you believe your own nonsense, then why would you be here? Well, it's because you're still trying to convince yourself. Unfortunately, you've inadvertently stumbled on and then swallowed a red pill. Now you're trying to convince yourself otherwise, telling us how it's dead. Oh, yeah. Well, that's fascinating. Well, go in peace. Get on with your life. What's that? You can't. You're here daily.
It could be your show's so popular they can't contain themselves.
Boom, boom. Like
They're
bouncy
hitting
balls.
themselves against the container walls.
Any evidence of the R value?
Black Swan.
That's the most painful one, isn't it? Not having R.
Well, not for any of us, but because you relinquished your globe faith based on the lack of R value evidence and the black swan, then for you, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the rough one.
My surname would sound weird without an R, though.
And R value, the radius of the Earth, 3959 miles to the centre point from the outside edge.
You mean geometry? They need actual physical geometry to have this R value.
Yeah, you know, based on measuring a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon, deriving an R value from a dip angle from a 90-degree zenith on an assumed ball, like Alberuni did.
Alberuni measured what?
He measured a physical geometric sphere edge horizon with a straight line tangent to an assumed tangent point on a sphere. Something they say we can't see and only exists in the maths, and is the basis of their maths because that is where they get the R value from.
No, he didn't, and I tell you why. Because due to the refraction calculations based on that R value that he didn't see, we can't see it because of the refraction. Yeah.
That's an interesting and clever way of describing the paradox that's not been done before. Kudos, Brian.
Thanks.
I got filleted alive for that one. What are you talking about?
Yes, say it again.
I got filleted alive for that one.
I bet him a pound he can't say it again. I bet a pound he can't do it.
I wasn't talking pretend.
Yeah. Let's see if you can surmise the same exact way of describing Arwinian paradox. Go ahead. Let's see if you can do it. Same exact description. Go. Let's see if you can do it.
No, he didn't, because he couldn't see the. Oh.
Yeah, you see?
Yeah.
Summarizing the paradox, right? You can do it in the moment. But when you come to actually repeat it, because it's paradoxical, you're trying to describe doing something that can't be done. And it's a really... It was beautiful, Brian. You'll have to listen to it back on the replay, because I can't repeat it either. But it was epic. You're just describing the paradox, not being able to measure something, because what you're saying is, it's not there where it would be measured. And the reason it's not there is because the measurement of it moves it. It makes no sense.
No, he didn't.
There's quantum interference.
He's having a bash. Let it go. Go ahead, Brian. Might still owe you a pound.
No, he didn't, because I had it there, Owen. Oh, no.
It's Owen's fault. Let's move on. Leave Brian in a bit of torturous pain while he tries and wrap his head around the paradox he's just described. Excellent. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of said presupposed spherical Earth?
Well, I have veggies growing in my garden, so.
And what does that have to do with the price of rice?
It's just a little joke, don't worry.
Veggies at the bottom of your garden.
Magnetic core. How else will they grow?
I'm lost. Right, veggies at the bottom of the garden, self-perpetuating molten iron core, centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. You're going to have to link these two things together for me.
He's trying to say that the only way that root vegetables grow is when they reach the molten iron core. That's where they get their magnetic energy to become root vegetables.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That is what you're saying.
Yeah, how do you think I get my delicious poikikos?
That's why they're full of iron. Come on.
Well, I mean, you can always affirm the consequent with such things. If there is a presupposed spherical Earth, with a molten iron core, then my vegetables will grow beautifully because of the magnetic field. My vegetables do grow beautifully because of the magnetic field. Therefore, there is a molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. Just affirm the consequent.
It's obvious, Nathan. Carrots, the pointy end of the carrots point down to the magnetic field. The fat parts are above the ground. It's just there. Come on.
Yeah, but you missed the point. I had to grow them to point to magnetic west.
There you go. There you go. So, if Earth, a sphere with a presupposed molten iron core at the centre of it, then my carrots will grow better when pointing to magnetic. What did you say? West.
West. Thanks, RC.
Okay. And my carrots do grow better when pointing to magnetic west. Okay. Therefore, Earth with presupposed spherical and molten iron core at its centre.
Well, at the carrots, I can see your argument better.
Beautiful. It's an affirming the consequent. The point is that the Q, if P then Q, right? Well, the P is normally your presupposition, if Earth a sphere. The Q statement can be anything that's true, then grass will be green. Then you just affirm the consequent. Grass will be green, therefore Earth a sphere. You know, you can throw in anything you like. It's more useful if you actually have something that's observable. It gets more complex when they throw in something like, if Earth a sphere, then when I travel to the south, not mentioning that that's presupposing the spherical surface that they're trying to prove, then I'll observe star rotation. Now, in your mind, you might not catch the fact that that actually assumes the outcome they're trying to prove. Then they affirm the consequent. I do observe star rotation in the south, not mentioning that I assume that's antipodal. Therefore, Earth a sphere and you're antipodal.
What about if we're living on a hollow Earth and the supposed molten iron core is a sun? This is I'm on your side, but I'm just saying hypothetically, the molten iron core could be an inner sun, maybe.
What core?
Yeah, what core?
I'm just saying hypothetically. This core that the globies keep talking about.
Anything is possible, and
just that it's molten iron already debunks itself.
well,
yeah, well, how do they know it's iron?
They don't. Well, I'm being serious. They don't.
No, I know that. That's why I'm laughing. It's like, yeah, it is completely presupposed. Like they don't literally know what it's made out of. It's completely hypothetical.
Indeed. Any more on the molten iron core?
Like, what's the deepest we've gone down, Nath? It's like 12 kilometers in Russia.
7.6 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
they can figure that out by drilling down that far. It's ridiculous.
Agreed. Shout out to Al Junkie for the super chat. Flatsoid is fan of Mick Magnetic West. Is that so? I didn't know Al Junkie.
Yeah, I'd like taking a Mickey out of him.
Mick West and the magnetic carrots. Love it.
I only got a
That's
couple
gonna be a
more.
band.
Where's
It
Neil?
sounds like a band.
Band name, right?
No, you're not going to get a response out of him. Right, let's move on. A couple of more housekeeping questions to go. So, any scientific evidence of gravity?
No, because if we did have, they would give it to us by now.
Now they're still trying to figure out what it is, even though their entire cosmology incorporates it, whatever it is supposed to be.
Isn't it strange how the whole scientific community has a consensus saying it is scientifically validated, but when you ask for the hypothesis, they can't bring up anything for you.
Perfect segue.
It is scientifically assumed, and they're still working on that validation.
Well, I was going to say scientifically assumed would be the independent variable in a hypothesis, right? So Flatsoid's point is exactly the same. When you ask them for a hypothesis, suddenly there's a lot of mumbling and shuffling of feet.
Yeah,
Cavendish experiments.
It's the proven cornerstone to our world and everything in it, but there's no proof of it.
Well, if we live on a sphere, it has to be true.
Yeah.
What
Check
about
out.
if we don't live on a sphere?
At least John Jones has been listening. Hold on, Brian. So
Either
yes,
way, down is down.
Hold on 1 second. At least father of a stolen child's demonstrating that he's been listening. So yeah, you can just affirm the consequent, John. Do you want to just repeat what you just said?
But if we live on a sphere, it has to be true.
So if P then Q, right? So we're talking about, what were we talking about? Gravity. If we live on a sphere, then we must have gravity. And we do have gravity, therefore Earth's a sphere. It's just if P, then Q, Q, therefore P again, right? Most of the time, you'll only get half of it, which is precisely what John did. He just infers that the latter then follows the former. Doesn't actually have to say it.
But do we have gravity, though?
But you need a measured arc.
There's something there that when we drop something, it goes down. But the thing is, all it is things going back into equilibrium. Like, say, for instance, we've spoken about this heaps of times. Like, if you're on a globe or you're on a flat Earth, like, down is down. Right? So if you're going to pick something up, it's going to fall. Remember Blue Ball's experiment? Like, it completely debunked this. It's just what it is that you take something, you move it out of its original place, it's going to fall back down. It's really just a matter of densities. Things going back to where they want to go to, where you've taken them from. Basically.
Or up.
In relation to the medium's density.
Yeah.
It works
exactly.
It works every time, except when you tell your kids to clean up their room. Nothing ever goes back.
Yeah. Mine aren't old enough for that yet, but I can completely understand.
There's another problem with that logic too. Because if you live on a sphere, you need a measurable R value. So the first statement is false. We don't live on a sphere.
Yeah, but
sorry, Nathan, go ahead.
Well, when they affirm the consequent, the fact that both of those things are assumed is irrelevant, right? The fact that they're using their fundamentalist religious zealot belief that they're on a sphere to affirm the consequent of a not actual force that you can think of as a force when describing mathematics of bending conceptual mediums, that would be pseudo-Ramonian force space. The fact that one is a fundy belief and the other is also a fundy belief, that doesn't stop them in the slightest, John. They'll still make that argument all day long.
Right, yeah, but the if part of the if it's a sphere, then it has to be true. Like the it's not a sphere though. Like, so it doesn't have to be true.
And I'll just be the same as they would be and assert with dogged zealotry that I automatically assume it is though. Therefore it must be though. So therefore I automatically assume it's a sphere, and it must be. Therefore, we must have gravity to explain how the sphere works that I'm automatically assuming. So I can just reassert this all day, like they would.
You're better at it than me.
What it is a massive...
What sphere?
What it is they're using an incorrect modus ponens as a massive begging the question fallacy. Because what they're saying is, modus ponens is if A then B, A therefore B. That's the basics of modus ponens. But what they're saying is, if the globe is a sphere, if the Earth is a globe, A, then B, we will have gravity. They're saying we do have gravity, B, so the Earth is a globe, A. We don't have any of them. You know what I mean? This is what they do. This is their whole shtick.
Yeah, so you're saying that if you assert, if I grow grass and care for it, it will be green. Now, to assert, I grew my grass and cared for it, therefore it was green. That's if A then B, A therefore B. That's perfectly sound logic. But when you say, if I grow my grass it will be green, or if I grow my grass and care for it, it will be green, and then you say, my grass is green, therefore I grew it and cared for it. Well, I live in an apartment and I've got a gardener. I don't touch the grass. But because it's green, I looked after it and cared for it? No, the former doesn't necessarily follow the latter. But that's what you do when you affirm the consequent. Now, in this slightly more convoluted example, we've got John taking two things that don't actually exist. Now, I've said it helps if your Q statement, or your B statement in this example, is actually true. It does help if you've actually got green grass to make the example. Now, if you haven't, it's less convincing. But I'm saying it doesn't stop the fundamentalist religious zealots from asserting, if the Earth's a sphere, well, there's your begging the question fallacy, then we'll have gravity. Well, there's another begging the question fallacy. They can still assert and affirm in the consequent with two things that are completely not true and undemonstratable or provable in any way, shape or form to affirm their own fundamentalist religious belief of one or the other.
It's a great religion.
Yeah, because you could have just laid out some fake grass too.
Get off my turf.
Well, they don't even need the grass. That's what I'm saying. In this example, right, you've got something that's not physically capable of being viewed or measured. That's the sphere Earth. We're standing on a flat plane. It's as simple as that. So those two things are incapable of derivation by measurement. Even though it's claimed to be, we've debunked them all, so let's not go over how. Well, that bit is therefore false, if P. Well, if P, because it's false, well, that's a loss leader, immediately you've lost, you're not going anywhere. But therefore Q will have gravity holding it all together with a not actual force of bending space-time. It's like, well, that's nonsense also. That's just a reification fallacy of some mathematics derived from Einstein's nonsense. So what, you're going to insert a force, an emergent force, from this not actual force in pseudo-Riemannian force space? And then you just affirm the consequent. Well, we've got an emergent force that's not actually a force that we can think of as a force. We call it gravity. And therefore we must have a sphere Earth beneath our feet. You're like, neither of these are... Who are you trying to convince here? Well, the answer's pretty simple. Themselves.
Yep.
Yep. Very true.
A quick shout out to James Richard. If I drop a variable within a medium and the variable falls through the medium, then I take the same variable in a different medium and the variable goes up, it's not the medium. Is not the medium the cause?
It's kind of grows in you, doesn't it?
Thank you very much for the super chat, James Richard. It's got a question mark at the end, but I don't know how to answer.
I was saying your grass analogy is one of your best when you're trying to share whether affirming the consequences. Show you how to clip it out.
I didn't tie it to anything though, so it's just an example of affirming the consequent.
That's what I'm saying. It was good.
Well, it's not tied to anything. Let's do it. So if I've cared for my grass and grown it, it will be green. My grass is green, therefore I've looked after it and cared for it, even though I've got a gardener. Affirming the consequent. If the Earth is a sphere, then I will observe star rotation in the south hemisphere. I observe star rotation in the south hemisphere, therefore the Earth's a sphere. So the former doesn't follow the latter. Well, the latter doesn't follow the former, I should say. Because the former starts with an assumption that you're going to be making a journey antipodal on a sphere. So you've already begged the question in your P statement. Now you're affirming it by saying that when I travel south, well, let's not assume that we're travelling south and going to end up antipodal, like your assumption dictates. South is towards the horizon. So we arrive south, the sky's still above me, the ground's still below me, I'm not hanging off the bottom of a sphere. I haven't assumed I am, so I'm not. Because no assumption was required, nothing indicated that I was going to be hanging off the bottom of a sphere when I travelled south towards the horizon. Now when I got there, I noticed there was star rotation, that bit was true. But it doesn't imply that the former statement of if the Earth's a sphere suddenly applies because I've travelled south. In no way had anything indicate that I'm travelling over the edge of a sphere. And when measured, it demonstrably shows that it's not. So there's nothing to infer in any way, shape or form that the assumption of antipodal travel when moving south applies. I just I've had an affirming the consequent put to me in the same way as it's easy to assert that I've cared for my grass nicely simply because it's green when the gardener's done it. There you go. I'm not going to trim it out.
you did much better than I thought. I was doing a pun with your grass clippings.
You just cut it to a T.
Boom, boom. Nathan. I love our 10th man's pun went over my head, but Flat Sword's got a boom, boom. What was your pun? I missed it completely, 10th. And then we'll move on to the last housekeeping question.
I said, you were talking about grass. It was fantastic. So obviously, grass clippings, you ought to clip it out.
Oh, damn. Well, the audience got an extra example that destroyed the idea that we're travelling antipodal. So I thank you anyway, even though it was completely over my head. But boom, boom. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics.
Would you need to actually have an hypothesis and do an experiment physically to figure out what the variables are?
Nonsense. No, we're not asking for that. No. Not even asking for an experiment. Just a valid hypothesis. Not validated. They don't have to give us an experiment.
So they would have to at least have some kind of observation and then make an hypothesis of the observation.
Exactly. They've got plenty of natural phenomenon. All of them go on and on with their just so stories about their natural phenomena that they're observing and then give you a little story about what causes it. Now, that's not sufficient. We're saying if you've got a natural phenomena, you can easily suppose the cause of it. Well, if you've got a supposed cause and you've got an effect, you've got an independent variable, that would be your presupposed or supposed cause, and you've got an effect. Well, that's all we're asking for. You can then formulate that with a null if you choose to. If A, that's your presumed cause, then not B, not the effect. That's your null. That's all the hypothesis is. An assumption of a cause, your supposition of the cause, that's your independent variable, and the effect you observed, the thing you're studying, the thing you're trying to figure out what caused it. And then you say, if my independent variable, supposed cause, I won't see the effect. That's the null. There you go. That's it. Hypothesis construction 101. That's what we're asking.
But you got a problem there. Because then you're saying it's scientific.
So we just need an independent variable that we can manipulate, huh?
It is scientific.
That should be easy.
It is. Hold on, Chocolate. Hold on, just one sec. It is scientific. That would be a scientific prediction. Now, the prediction hasn't been validated, but it's absolutely a required step in the method. It's the scientific prediction. That's what a hypothesis is.
So astrophysics is scientific now?
If they can give us a valid hypothesis, now, obviously, we'll have a look at it and scrutinise whether or not they can actually vary the cause they've asserted.
Dr. Becky did it. She did her hypothesis and then looked at computer images and listened to iTunes. That's how she did it.
That's not.
Computer data is so scientific.
Yeah, that's neither a dependent variable naturally occurring phenomenon or a presumed cause of any phenomenon that's being studied. So, no.
I believe they call it computer science.
That's an oxymoron.
Very nice.
No, it's an oxymoron.
Yeah, I know. I just like the way he said it.
It's funny because it's a course they offer in school, computer sciences.
Yeah, science would be dealing with the physical and natural world, or physics. Computers, you can't get any more man-made. No naturally occurring phenomena in computing.
Yeah, that's an oxymoron. How dare you bring it up?
Contradiction.
Say again?
Just like atmosphere, glaring contradiction.
Yeah, another oxymoron. Air, sphere, that's a shape. Well, air takes the shape of its container. Air's not sphere-shaped. It's an oxymoron also, correct? That's one of the ones that's going to take a long time to untrain saying the word air, sphere, presupposed fundy belief. Those two words are ingrained in most of us, right? Or one word, I should say.
But you would need actual containment to have a shape, would you not? Because it would take the shape of a container.
If the air was sphere-shaped, it would be because it's in a sphere-shaped container, that's correct. It could only be asserted as atmosphere if the container was a sphere.
Funny enough, they say that Earth is an open system, so they don't have containment. How's that work?
Yeah, exactly. They just say that the air is sphere-shaped.
I thought they had a valve.
Bivalve.
I don't think so.
Yeah, they were saying they had a little valve up there. One of the ballers said that.
Maybe one of the ballers.
You were on the debate with Craig Fight the Flat Earth, and he was saying something can get out, but something can't come in, remember?
Yeah, it's a closed system that lets matter in and out.
Hold on, say again, Mr. Palmer.
Like a pressure release valve.
Yeah, but a valve is something that opens and closes on a container, or between two containers, or between a container and the open air. That's what a valve is. So that would imply that there's something around a sphere Earth, and there's a little tap or valve or whatever you want to... This is nonsense. Why are we even contemplating this? It's the implication that we do have...
It's because of Slice Volcano, who says it's a closed system that's open, remember? And Fight the Flat Earth, that says it's a closed system that lets matter in or out.
Right, these are contradictions in terms. Like married bachelor. Can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant.
Try telling them that.
It's either open or closed. Can't be open closed. Like it can't be a liquid gas.
This is when I hate when the ballers come. Oh, but thermodynamics only works with isolated systems. And they're like, oh, really?
No, only is described in the law. Now, the law describes something that occurs always, and the description uses ideal circumstances to describe it. But it's describing something that occurs always. So the law isn't the thing being described. It's the description of something that occurs always. Hence, it gets the title Law of Nature. So the nature bit is the thing that's occurring always. The description bit is the law that describes it. So because the law says isolated systems, yeah, that doesn't matter. It's describing something that occurs in nature. The idealized circumstances that describe it aren't the effect.
Don't you think we would have big problems with mechanical engineers studying thermodynamics and saying, sorry, we can't use it for open and closed systems?
Yeah, exactly. Hold on. We're going to apply the second law here. I don't know, let's not apply that in this model because, this isn't an idealized circumstance that we're going to be building. It's not going to be perfect. It'll still have some heat transfer through the container, so it's not isolated. So, yeah, I think we should just give up.
Well, I think one of the tricks is to, in your mind, you got to imagine it's an open system and an open container are exactly the same thing.
Okay.
But they're not necessarily.
Okay, so I'm imagining an open container, right? And what I've got, let's say it's massive. Let's say it's the size of the Earth. That's how big this container is, and it's open. And I'll open up a valve in a chamber that's got gas in it. And all the gas just goes everywhere and disappears really rapidly. So I've imagined it, and the gas just filled the space in line with natural law.
Well, see, it's a bunch of like mental games you got to play with yourself to actually get there, and it still doesn't make sense in the end because you're never going to get your presupposition of gravity to overcome entropy.
Indeed, it's not sufficient. There's not actual force. Shocker! You'd think not actual forces would be really powerful with their not actual nature of not doing anything actually. Physically. Yeah, you'd think that would overcome a natural law, wouldn't you? Oh no, that's just the delusion that you have to tell yourself if you're a globe-believing fundy zealot that's got a globe belief.
But what I'm saying is, even within that conception, when you're in the globe, you still have to imagine layers and imaginary containers going up and pressing down on the imaginary container below it.
All right. So and when you do that, John, because you've been there, what you say pressing down on the one below. What about the one at the top? Because gas expands in all directions. It's not just down there, right? So what are they pressing on at the top?
We don't try to talk about the top. We stay away from that.
But that's what I'm saying. They're violating anything. I mean, they're trying to say gas is only down at one vector. If someone can prove that to me,
Oh, I can.
Be amazing.
I can cite Thunderfoot Clown. What you do is you take some solids, forget that they're not gas, and pour them into a fish tank and watch them go down, go boom, boom. When you pour those solids through a gas, that'd be the air. And now the air is just moving in all directions and still managing to go into the container and into the person that's pouring the bores out's lungs to make sure that they can still breathe. So it's not staying just in the container, the gas that we refer to as expanding in all directions. But bouncy balls, if I pour them into a fish tank, then I can assert that gas does that. It goes down, go boom, boom, like bouncy balls, even though it expands in all directions. It's nonsense, but I can assert it because a PhD clown called Thunderfoot asserted it, with demonstrations, with him pouring bouncy balls into a fish tank.
Wow.
Not convinced? Surely that convinces you that gas go down, go boom, boom.
No, but you're saying...
Rumpus will come in here and describe how gas acts like bouncy balls, but then tell us how bouncy balls acts like gas.
Yeah, he did that, didn't he? Yeah, he said if you imagine that the bouncy balls have got elastic collisions, then they'll expand in all directions and won't slow down and eventually pool at the bottom of the tank. So in other words, if bouncy balls behaved like gas, they'd fill the space. Now gas behaves like gas with elastic collisions and fills space. So if space was a space and gas behaved like gas, not like bouncy balls behaving like gas, but actually like gas, that's expanding in all directions, elastic collisions, not going down, go boom boom, then it would fill the space, because space is a space, right? According to them. But then we'd all be dead, because the gas would have filled it.
But this is where they say it's not gas, they say it's atmosphere. But then you ask, what is atmosphere made of?
There's a bigger issue. There's a bigger issue. Gas is only gas because it has become less dense than liquid. And liquid is normally less dense than most solids. So gas is only gas because it is the least dense matter we know of.
What about...
So how can it be going down, going boom, boom?
What about liquid gas?
If you can find me some of that.
You gotta ask Rumpus about that. He's the only one that knows about liquid gas.
Yeah, but Nathan, liquid gas is just compressed gas.
I see. Fascinating stuff. Meanwhile, gas expands in all directions to fill the availability of volume that it has to fill.
Not to mention thunderclouds.
Metals can actually
use the
be
fucking
turned
fish
into
tank.
gas.
Like, why didn't he pour it on top of a beach ball?
Why didn't he pour the bouncy balls onto a beach ball when he was saying that bouncy balls, which will go down, go boom boom, because they're not moving in all directions and bouncing off each other with elastic collisions? Why didn't he pour the non-analogous bouncy balls onto a basketball? Is that what you're asking?
More analogous beach ball instead of a fucking fish tank. Like, that's retarded.
But it still
Beach
wouldn't...
ball
Because it'd fall off, and then his magic trick will be over for the Globetrotters.
Yeah, it looks very silly.
The beach ball doesn't have a presupposed molten iron core, that's why.
Well, you can think of it as having a presupposed molten iron core. Just have to think on the not really is level 10th.
Yeah, just go grow a garden.
Yeah, but then I'd be a baller, and I don't want to be a baller.
No, that's true. Nobody wants to be a baller here. I mean, literally, in this scenario now.
Shout out to George Mooser for adding the really is level into our vernacular. Shout out to George Mooser for that. Thanks.
I think the biggest insult anyone can call us is a baller.
Ironic, given the general social status of being a flat earther, wouldn't you say?
I'd like to point out Chocolate's timing as impeccable as usual. So if a flat earther said, we don't really need to, what was it again, Chocolate?
We don't have to work at the really is level.
Yeah, so if we don't have to work at the really is level, if a flat earther said that, it wouldn't be as powerful as George Muser saying it.
Exactly, that was the beauty of him saying it.
What was the rest of it?
would make fun of you if you said that.
Hold on, John. What was the rest of it?
Exactly.
Something about we can, we must, something or other.
We can, we do, we must consider Newtonian gravity as a force. Doesn't mean it really is one, but we don't necessarily have to work at the really is level. End quote.
Perfect.
You know, it reminds of taking an empty bowl and mixing not actual ingredients and then dishing it up as a salad.
You can think of it as a salad, the empty plate. You don't have to work at the really is level when you come to dine with me.
If Rumpus, I just heard you comment. I couldn't come in a second ago when you talking about what reply Rumpus would give if he was asked, how come if we drop these bouncy balls onto a beach ball that they would just fall off it? What he'll do is he'll say it's not analogous because it doesn't have the mass that Earth mass that the globe Earth has, so it doesn't have the gravitational effect. Blah blah blah. So what he will do, and all the rest of them, just for clarity for the audience, is they will then turn that very pertinent question really into a monstrous begging the question fallacy.
Yeah, they'll point
but that's 106 years old.
Well, no, I see where you're going, Brian. What they'll say is if it was a big enough beach ball, and when you get to, well, how big? Well, about the size of Earth, then my special pleading fallacy kicks in, with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you, first and foremost, to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Fortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you for smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out NathanOakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Yeah, but the sad thing is they still buy into that and they still fight for it, and they just say we don't understand.
You know what's funny? Just Google, does gravity exist? Just Google it. The first thing that pops up in big letters, gravity doesn't exist. I don't know if that's the same with everybody's Google, but it definitely happened online.
Yeah, and it says the concept. It doesn't even say it's actual. It says it's concept.
Must be painful for the globe side. The hero is telling, yeah, it's a concept, it's just a reification fallacy you're falling foul of when you tell us that it's actually a force, when you've been explicitly told that it's not a force. I mean, you've been also told that you can think of it as a force, so you're also telling us just how obedient you are. But nevertheless, you then go and Google it and it says, yeah, it's not a force, it's just a concept. How painful.
Exactly. How can you scientifically validate a concept?
You don't. But that's, like I said on a few shows ago, I think it was to you, Flatsoid, but I think that's why they've pushed it into the conceptual in the first place. You know, you can't really argue about something that's not qualifiable in the physical realm, like Al-Biruni or Cavendish, if it's not in the physical realm. If it only exists in the maths, then it's much easier to argue about it, because who's going to prove you wrong? Well, it works in the maths, as long as people don't realise the trick that's being pulled on them. That is reification of mathematics into physical actuality, which it doesn't do. But if you don't know that, you don't know that, right? They just describe what's happening in physical reality with mathematics, and you go, well, that must be what's happening then, right? Don't know, you don't know.
It's like the escape back door. You can just say, see, it was just a concept.
Well, it's like Harry Potter's broom. You could calculate how fast it would go. You could calculate the G-forces he would feel as he turned. You could calculate all those things. It doesn't make it real.
Exactly. Likewise, you can calculate the time dilation in Narnia.
It is. It's a painful thing to be a globe.
I want to hear something really silly. This might be a little off, but we were talking about this one day in 24/7. Say, yeah, you can just calculate stuff. Like you calculate how fast Superman flies and all this nonsense, right? So I looked it up. I actually put it in because I was like, somebody's probably done this. And of course, who pops up? Neil deGrasse Tyson. So he's talking about Superman and how Superman flies. And the guy is so retarded. He doesn't even say that Superman's flying. He says he's just jumping.
No, that's right. No. What he's saying is, in the heliocentric rhetoric, you've got a force of gravity that's not a force, but we won't get back into that. We've already covered it. But they've got orbits. Now, Superman is very much part of the predictive programming, if you will, for space. So what does Superman do? He demonstrates an orbit. when he flies around Earth. Now, what Tyson's saying is he's just performing the same motion as the ISS. So you could say the ISS is, quote unquote, flying at 17,500 miles an hour. But it's not. It's just falling around my presupposition of an Earth that's spherical and with orbital motions where things fall around other physical bodies. And that's all Superman's really doing. He's jumping up very, very high and very, very fast and then just falling around Earth. Superman's there to brainwash you. He's there to show you the globe and he's there to show you an orbit.
But he was orbiting, wasn't he orbiting backwards to turn back time?
Don't forget he's an extraterrestrial too.
Yeah, he's from outer space. He's very much part of the heliocentric rhetoric. What's the paper, Clark?
This is just sad because he's.
What's the paper that Clark Kent works at?
Daily Planet.
And it even has a planet on top of the building.
Yep.
Did you see my GPS paradox in Master B?
Yeah, of course I did.
Crap, now I gotta go look at it. Hold on a sec.
Clearly unfamiliar with my subtlety. That means no, not at all.
I've heard you mention it a couple times already.
I was going, I don't know, that doesn't sound like you did it.
Been a fun show, Nathan. What a good show today.
Yeah, it really grew on us all.
There you go again with your garden.
A happier time without constant fundamentalist religious zealot interruption.
How true is that?
And I like the way the projection from the ballers has subtly changed into moaning about how that's somehow an issue for us. It's like, yeah, you in the comments are hoping for some saviour to come and put forward a decent argument for the globe to get what you want out of being here, which is to confirm your own bias. That's what you're looking for, and you're hoping someone will come. And when they don't come, and we're just having a whale of a time talking about how Earth is flat, you want to moan because you want to hear somebody putting the argument forward for your globe. Now, the reality is, no one's coming to save that argument. Doors are open daily, but no one's going to come and save that argument because it's dead.
I don't know. I kind of like when Nathan spanks Rumpus. I kind of like when they come in and they get spanked. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it is fun making fun of the globe, though, I have to say.
I mean, you never know, man. You know, we do get, jewels like somebody will come in and claim that nobody claims the horizon is the curve of the Earth.
Or you'll get somebody to declare your model. Otherwise, he will not argue.
Thinking about it, Chocolate, I can't think of any other examples like that with Tim. So most of the ballers keep away because they've come in and had their ass handed to them in a very embarrassing way. And at one point we were, trimming them out almost daily. Toe tags. Here's another baller who's reasonably well known, making himself look like an ass. Well, Tim, until that point, hadn't really done that. He'd had his debates about his pictures with the title "This is Earth Curve" and comparative horizons in it. Well, he'd come and argued the toss about angular size resolution and diffraction and swells of oceans between you and it, and all these other different things were argued about, but he'd never been left in a really embarrassing position until he just failed to actually look at and fully comprehend the Black Swan argument. And then at the end of his argument, with his images saying this is Earth curve of multiple horizons comparatively as he raises in altitude, he has told us, quote, nobody claims the horizon is Earth curve, end quote. So what's he going to do? Is he going to come back in to that? Because that's all he's going to get, right? Non-stop. 5 panel members going, so the horizon's not Earth curve then?
You bamboozled him.
You bamboozled me with my argument that fails. How dare you?
He bamboozled himself.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? Okay, the GPS paradox. How can you claim GPS to measure an R value when for GPS satellites to exist, you would have had to have measured R to begin with.
Indeed. Their reference that the model from GPS was based on a datum that requires an assumption of an R value to go forward and measure your tangent planes. Well, if you haven't got the R value to make the assumption to then measure it all flat, how are you going to measure it at all with an assumption and then say that you've measured it from the derivation that assumed the R in the first place? Yeah, it's a paradox. Well done.
They just pre-assume the zenith is going to the center of an oblate spheroid datum. That's all they do. Other than that, it's flat. Everything is flat. All GPS is all flat.
Yeah, but that's what he's saying. He's saying if they're going to hold that up as proof, it's a bit like holding up a refracted horizon as proof for measuring a horizon that's non-refracted, tangent, point-based. You know, you can't have both, and that's what you're saying, right, John? It's a paradox.
Yeah, it's really simple. He's just saying, how are you saying this thing is measuring R when you needed R to put that thing where it was supposed to be to measure the R in the first place? That doesn't work. Can't work. You needed R in the first place to get it up there. Can't therefore put it up there and then say, oh, I'm using this to measure R. It's retarded.
Well, to give the audience, I'm not proposing what John is saying or going against what he's saying. Just to give the audience a little bit of history, in 1994, the CORS network came online basically for surveyors. And then after 1994, the general public was allowed use of the CORS network. And that's after 1994, we started having sat navs in cars and things like that start becoming kind of something that the general public could have. But in 1995, the US military launched GPS and made it public, and GPS was all satellites. But just a year previous, GPS was a load of land towers sending microwave signals. And since 1994, the amount of these land towers sending microwave signals has increased big time. But in 1995, the US military allowed GPS to become public, even though in 1994 GPS was set up for surveyors, and then it became public after that. You see what they did? They took away the reality of what GPS was. Now, I'm not saying there isn't any high-altitude balloon program that may be of use to it, but I can't find any evidence that it's there or it's needed. So in 1994, the actual GPS turned up, which was for surveying. And then in 1995, the US military came out with a big space version of it. And everyone believes that GPS is satellites in space.
Right.
When it's just land towers.
What I find interesting about that is it's originally for surveyors. So in other words, regardless if you're a geodetic surveyor or not, regardless if your starting point is a surveyor that's going to build something in physicality on the flat plane, you get offered a system that has a backstory that automatically assumes the datum for you. It's even in the title. So when you look at the GPS system and you look at where your position is in regards to what it's referencing, well, it's already begged the question for you.
Yeah.
Very clever. The deception's clever. I hate admiring it, but it's just one of those things. You know, that the loss of it originally turns into admiration for how someone can create a construct that's been reified by the majority of the Western world so convincingly. You've got to take your hat off to that.
When my anger about it finally dissipated, that's all I can do is be mesmerized by how complicated it actually is.
Yeah, exactly. You go, wow. And then you can admire it for its beauty. When you go, well, it's only a model. But what an intricately complex, full of contradictions model it is. And the fact that, like I say, so many people can reify it into their actual world without any consideration or very limited consideration takes a huge amount of work in preparation, groundwork, to lay those foundations for the whole of the Western world to be adhering to all at the same time. Just amazing, really.
Could I share my screen, Nathan?
Can?
Okay, 1 second now. This is to do with globiolis.
Before you go through with that, is globiolis the cause of the Coriolis virus, or is Coriolis virus the cause of globiolis?
No, globiolis causes it.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to attribute it to the cause. The globiolis is the glober's description of a minor hijacking of what we actually have, Coriolis effect, and an insertion of the retention of, no, what's the term? I keep getting this wrong. Conservation of angular momentum. There we go. I got there in the end. So it's those two things. The Coriolis virus is a relinquishment of the argument that we even have reference frames at all. So it's telling us we wouldn't expect to see any drift. Now, when they describe presupposed drift that's got a changing rate based on the speed changes when describing the conservation of angular momentum, that's globiolis effect, as opposed to telling us that we haven't got any reference frames to assert, i.e. like flat Earth's making an argument that needs reference frames. That's Coriolis virus.
Okay, I'm just correlating them in my mind then.
If you get a glober telling you that we wouldn't expect to see drift, or, if to be more overt, you and your reference frames have been ruined, that's a quote from a glober leaving fundy named Simon Dan. Now that's telling me that my reference frames, that I don't claim, are ruined. Well, we don't have any to claim, but the globe absolutely does. So that's a disease that they suddenly they have upon realising that there isn't any demonstrable drift. Well, that's what we point out. Nothing's drifting. Earth's not turning underneath anything. Then they mistake that for it being our argument. Like we're saying there should be drift. They mistakenly think that we're making the argument we're debunking. And they tell us we wouldn't expect to see drift. It's like, no, that's your argument that you're now debunking. So that's when they suffer this infection, because they've realised there's no drift. So they have to tell us, well, we wouldn't expect it, even though they're claiming it.
And one of the symptoms is going against their own priests.
Yeah,
like
one of the
Neil
symptoms.
deGrasse Tyson, who actually absolutely claims that there is drift, even tells us how somebody scored a field goal because of it.
Yes, exactly. Symptoms include telling your opponent, that would be us, flat earthers, that Neil deGrasse Tyson is simply wrong, and that we wouldn't expect to see drift, and that you and your reference frames that we're not claiming on the flat earth side are ruined.
And don't forget also symptoms is double speaking. Something they say 2 minutes ago, and then they contradict the opposite of what they said. And then they say, no, we didn't.
Yes, for example.
I'll put it in Master B for you if you can.
Are you presenting now, Brian? I'll just get to. I will come to that, Adam. I'll just present Brian first. Yes, you're up, Brian. If you want to change the screen off the Hangout page.
Yeah, 1 second now. This is just something. This is from this physicsclassroom.com. This Glober sent me that this morning. As you can all see it, right? This is supposed to somehow explain their claim, as if we need that explained to us. They're trying to say that the anteater and the ladybird are moving at different velocities, right? But if you can see up here, ladybug, linear velocity 7 centimeters a second, ant, linear velocity 22 centimeters a second. But they also say rotational velocity 26 degrees a second for both of them, right? This is completely debunks their claim. Because if you look, anyone here who wants to look, I'm just going to stop it a second. If you look straight ahead, I'm just going to go around so we can see it. Now, right there. You see this ant? If you look at his head, he's in direct line here between the P and the A on the record. Right, so I'm going to go again. And he never leaves that point. And that point never leaves him. Which completely debunks, right, their nonsense, where they have this conservation of angular momentum, which is a consistent, continual conservation, and that as the ant moves towards the center, that he is moving faster than the rest of the record. No, he's not, he moves in a straight line, he's going to be moving directly towards the P and the A, and he will keep on going around at the exact same angular rate. This completely debunks them. This is just such a simple little thing. And this is supposed to back up what their claims.
Well, let's just ask you a couple of questions. When they claim that we don't understand what Coriolis effect is because it's not Coriolis, it's conservation of angular momentum. Which of these two measurements, linear velocity and rotational velocity, which one of those is angular?
The rotational velocity.
So not the linear velocity then?
No.
So when they say it's conserving angular momentum, we need to look at the rotational velocity, which is measured in degrees in this example, or radians, correct?
Yes.
So who cares what the linear velocity is? They're claiming angular retention.
Exactly.
Okie
Exactly.
dokie. That's excellent. Yeah, perfect.
That's what they're doing. Sorry, Nathan.
I just want to put the main part of the summary in, which is, regardless of this claim of globiolus effect, Brian and I are now arguing about how globiolus works. Because for Coriolis effect to occur, one of these two insects has to observe something that's not on the rotating platform. For example, if you watch the ladybird, he's going, oh no, the ruler, oh no, the ruler. Where's it gone? Oh, the ruler's gone now. Oh, it must have moved away from me because it's moving, it's drifting. Oh, there's a ruler again. Oh, it's coming closer. It's getting closer. It's not moving. It just appears to be moving from the ladybird's perspective. Now he can't see it because it's behind him. But as he, the ladybird might be a she, never know. As he or she, this ladybug, gets closer to the ruler, there's an apparent deflection. It looks like it's getting closer to it. That's Coriolis effect. Not actual deflection observed as you rotate underneath something. So in this example, the only thing that would be observable with Coriolis effect from the vantage point of either the grasshopper or the ladybug would be the ruler. For the ladybug, it's looking like it's not there until he gets to this position and can see it again, and then it looks like it's getting closer and closer and closer and closer. Now the ruler's not moving, because Coriolis describes not actual deflection of the ruler from the vantage point of the ladybug. That's Coriolis effect. So the fact that there's a differing speed between the two different bugs, well, that's not got anything to do with Coriolis effect. Coriolis is describing how the ruler looks like it's moving when it's not. So me and Brian could fall into the Glober's trap and argue all day about globiolus effect. Because obviously while we're detailing what these two bugs do, we're working under the assumption that we're rotating on a record. And that's analogous to Earth. So we're already assuming that Earth is doing this. And we're just describing how it would differ between the two bugs on something that we're assuming is the same as Earth. So we assume Earth's rotating? No. If Earth was rotating, things that weren't attached to the rotating platform would seem like they'd come towards you, like for this bug. Now, the ruler seems like it's getting closer. Well, it's not. That's just because it's not attached, and that would be Coriolis. We'd need to see that if we were rotating. That's actually their claim, that stuff drifts because Earth turns underneath it. So let's not spend all day arguing about globiolus. Let's just call it out for what it is. Now, you've just made up this nonsense, because that's globiolus you're describing. We should see Coriolis effect, and we don't.
Could I just add one or two things to that?
Go ahead.
That the ladybug and the ant are actually moving at the same angular speed, but they're not. But if you were to take a line around the center where the ladybug is, to get around that line in a linear, which is straight line fashion, it would take you long. It would be shorter than going around the outside of the record, right? But we're not dealing with linear. We're dealing with a claim of angular. So in angular, they are moving at the same exact rate. Because if you put the ladybug over here, where in between the P and A, the two will be in line and they'll stay in line. And if this ruler was going across the top of this, let's say one really long ruler flying across the top of this, according to the ant, it's taking a curved trajectory because he is rotating, but the ruler will be going straight.
Yep. So, fun though it is to detail globiolus, my main priority is pointing out that they're two different things. Globiolus effect and this nonsense that we're detailing now and talking about linear velocity isn't Coriolis. Coriolis is something we would expect to see if Earth was turning. That would be to say that you'd launch a drone in the air on the equator and Earth would turn underneath it as it's claimed to do. The fact that the drone doesn't drift away from you as you rotate underneath it to observe Coriolis, as is claimed there is on a rotating Earth, simply implies that Earth is not rotating because there is no Coriolis effect. And when we point that out, we get this. Well, Globiolus says blah blah. No, that's not Coriolis. Well, yeah, but the different rotational velocity isn't the linear. That's not Coriolis. That's what we get. Now, Brian has taken the time to actually detail something that I just shut down every time it came up and pointed out that it wasn't Coriolis. He's taken the effort to actually detail what Globiolus effect is.
Yeah, because they're not speaking about the Coriolis effect or the conservation of angular momentum. They're not speaking about angular at all, as it's obvious. They're speaking about linear velocity. They're trying to take linear velocity and equate that to angular velocity. And angular velocity is always measured in radians or degrees per second.
Yeah, if you're going to claim the conservation of angular momentum, you're going to be giving us angular measurements for it, not linear ones.
Well, the angular momentum is measured in kilograms per. I can't remember the exact measurement, but it's not. But the whole thing that gives you angular momentum is angular velocity, and angular speed. The two of them are they're measured in degrees per second or in radians. What they're talking about is not the conservation. It's not angular velocity. It's not angular speed. It's not the conservation of angular momentum. And it's not the Coriolis effect. They're talking about some completely mutated version of God knows what.
Perfect. Right,
Well,
Adam.
on share now?
Well, I want to move on to Adam, but thank you very much.
Okay, no worries.
You want me to put this on screen, Adam?
Well, no, I was just before as we was discussing. I mean, I'll share it. Yeah.
Okay.
It just, where is it present?
So while you're doing that, this speaks to the point that BLMSB69 got covered in the show today when we were talking about the distance to the sun and parallax. So let's pop you up on screen. Okay, you're up.
Can you see it? Is it your Coriolis up?
Yeah.
Or is it the parallax? Which one have I got up?
You've got Coriolis virus symptoms thereof.
I'll move this one over. It was just, I was listening to you guys earlier, and this is from a geocentric thing, but it is something, when you mentioned it, it did ring a bell from the past. What you're saying, and the thing that rung a bell was them saying, just ignore it. You know, when you're calculating, and you're doing it, and you get it, and they admit you get these negative parallaxes, but the astronomical way of dealing with it is, as stated, just ignore it or turn. So that was the bit I remembered, and I just went hunting a little bit. And the first two paragraphs are quite good. It's according to heliocentric, there should be no such thing as negative parallax. As you detailed, it's impossible. If parallax is rightly called so, that is, if it is an optical illusion of apparent movement due to Earth moving around the Sun, then it follows there can only be parallax in one direction at a time. Earth cannot make its orbit around the Sun by opposite ways at once. The parallax must then be what is usually called parallax or positive parallax. If heliocentric does hear about negative parallax, he writes it down as bad measures. But if the measures for negative parallax are bad, so are those for positive. They are measured by the same tools.
Epic. So this has been covered. That's epic.
Yeah, I actually measured negative parallax with one of my friends once, and we just assumed that the instrument was wrong.
I see. Isn't that mad? Like I said...
What I didn't know, Nate, was what you'd said. I've assumed it was measured, and there you saw that star go backward that night. But what you're saying, and what I didn't know, was that it's just a retrograde position from the previous night. The movement is still the same. I probably never thought about it, to see them moonwalking.
That's interesting.
If you know what I mean.
Well, that's interesting because I did know that, but it still hadn't occurred to me.
Makes it more mysterious if it's doing that as well, though, doesn't it? Because it takes it out of any model.
So,
what the retrograde
you guys
motion
are saying is that you will see the star trails, but you won't see any parallax day to day. That's what you're saying? Or in the same night?
in the same night. So throughout a time lapse, I will look at this after the show's done, but in BLMS B69's videos, he's got 2 wandering stars, aka planets, that are at significantly different distances throughout the night with no parallax.
Okay. I get it.
Well, there should be, right?
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't there be?
Because they're not at different distances. I noticed in this quote it talks about Neo-Tychonian. Hopefully I'm saying that correct. I assume that's in association to Brahe, right?
I assume so, yeah. I didn't fancy the pronunciation, that's why I binned it.
I noticed that. But do you all, or are you all aware of what Tycho Brahe's input into this heliocentric model was? Or is, I should say. Anybody?
Go on, expand, Nathan.
Well, he objected to the notion of heliocentrism on the basis that the distances, when you derive the distance from the application of Kepler's third law and Venus being the same size as Earth, would make the distances so vast that for us to see them, they'd have to be absolutely colossal. That was his objection. Now that turned into them being massive. I.e., when you look at a scale, when you've got Betelgeuse and they compare it to the Sun, and it's vastly larger, well, that's off the back of an objection from Brahe.
I like that. I object to this model, because if so, they'd have to be this big. Well, the model's right, so we'll just make them that big now then.
Well, it's a bit like I feign no hypothesis, and to attribute this to me would be such a malice, or, you know, it's like Newton, right? What's that you say? It wouldn't be like it because it would have to be like this. No, it has to be like this. What's that you say you object? Well, we'll call it Neo-Tychian theory.
Well, it's very like what they did with the Coriolis when it was pointed out to them a few decades ago that we don't observe the Coriolis effect involving the solid Earth. They just decided to go off and make up some other nonsense. It's like, no, because we know it's a globe and we know that it's doing this and that. So.
Yeah, they'll talk out both sides of their mouth, and you see it when you read through Wiki or you read through a whole different bunch of references that give you 2 different explanations for the same thing. Now, if you're unaware of this, you're just left in confusion. But ultimately speaking, they've introduced a new description and called it Coriolis effect. Now you're detailing it and giving it a new title, Globiolus effect, so that there can be a distinction made between the 2 different things, because they are indeed different. Now they're also, just to throw a bit more confusion into the mix, calling it the conservation of angular momentum and asserting that we don't know what Coriolis effect is, and in the next breath saying that Coriolis effect is the conservation of angular momentum, which is, you know, a violation of the law of identity for a start. But nevertheless, that is what they say, and they say it with such dogged determinism. Why? Well, because they're told that it is in various different references that are basically detailing Globiolus effect.
And they're not even detailing the conservation of angular momentum. What they're talking about is not the conservation of angular momentum. This is the joke of it.
Yeah, but then you can start detailing what that is and arguing about how what they're describing isn't conservation of angular momentum or isn't Coriolis effect, rather than detailing, and this is the point, the Earth isn't turning underneath stuff, which is what they assert it does. That's what Coriolis is, and occasionally from the High Priesthood, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, will be asserted precisely in line with what Coriolis actually is. And in rebuttal, when we say, well, nothing's drifting, they show us examples like the one on screen and say, well, look, stuff doesn't drift. It's like, what, no Coriolis then? You're supposed to have Earth turning underneath stuff at 15 degrees an hour. Degrees an hour? That's what they assert, 15 degrees an hour turn of the Earth underneath, stuff not attached, so it appears to drift. So from the stands, you watch a ball go through the goal because Earth turned underneath it. The sniper has to lead his target according to them, not that it's true, because apparently when you fire the gun, the Earth's going to turn under the bullet. Well, that's Earth turning underneath stuff that's in the air for a second and a half until you launch a drone. And then suddenly, the drone motors can negate 1,000 miles an hour turn of the Earth. Why? Well, because it's in the air for a significant period and isn't showing any drift. So therefore, we wouldn't expect to see drift, is their argument. And they start telling us about how we have globiolus deflection. So there is a little bit of deflection, because I assert conservation of angular momentum, and then detail how there's a difference in linear speed as you move over a presupposed spherical surface. That's what they'll do. Never getting to the point, which is we haven't got anything drifting. I don't launch a drone and it flies away at 1,000 miles an hour because I turn away from it. That doesn't happen.
No, it does not.
And meanwhile, they'll tell you how an actual storm like a hurricane is happening because of this apparent deviation that we don't see, that they'll just told us why we don't see it. But then they'll tell us that, oh, we do see it because of hurricanes, which are actual.
And then reverse the burden of proof and say, well, how would you explain it then?
Yeah, exactly. How would you explain the differing directions of rotational speed on a flat Earth when you've got acclaimed different directional speed of weather patterns on a sphere Earth when they presuppose it? And you go, okay, you're asking me this in relation to a claim that is supposed to prove Earth spins. That's Coriolis effect. But the actual spin direction of a hurricane has absolutely nothing to do with you observing not actual drift. Unless you were in the hurricane spinning around in it.
Then if you get really lucky, maybe you can ask the globe why hurricanes appear to be rotating from the inertial reference frame. And maybe that globe will tell you, well, hurricanes 100% move in straight lines.
That's Kosho.
And then wait for them, and then just laugh and laughter ensues.
That happened. That was Kosho with you, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So for it to be actual Coriolis deflection, that's a kind of contradiction in terms, but we won't go over that. But for it to be actual Coriolis deflection, which in reality is not actual deflection, I might as well give it clarity, you'd have to have the wind travelling in a straight line, but because you're on a sphere Earth turning beneath it, from your vantage point on the ground, moving beneath it with a curved trajectory, it would appear that the wind moves in a curved path. That's Coriolis, if it was being described accurately on a globe Earth, which would therefore imply that the winds aren't actually moving in a circle, they only appear to move in a circle because you're turning underneath them, observing Coriolis effect. But that would mean the winds are all travelling straight. Just a straight line of wind that only looks curved because you're turning underneath it. Absurd to the nth degree.
Which is funny, because that's Kosho trying to stick to his model, except the whole part of it being depicted from the inertial reference frame, usually above the hurricane, and it's rotating. That goes against your model, buddy.
Yeah, they don't know the difference between not actual deflection, that's Coriolis effect, and actual spin directions. The difference between not actual and actual completely eludes them with most things. Doesn't matter if it's the horizon or Coriolis deflection. They don't know the difference between actual and not actual. And that's really what this is all about, right? The globe itself is a not actual thing, it's a model. But they think they're standing on it.
So when a hurricane passes by, it's not the hurricane spinning against everything, it's everything spinning against the hurricane, because the hurricane's just going straight.
That's what Kosho would have to imply if he's saying that it's an effect of Coriolis. You turning underneath a line of wind and it only appearing to go in a circle because you're turning underneath it. Because that's what Coriolis is. And that's where he was led by Chocolate when he's got him to detail the actual effect of Coriolis effect and then get him to his conclusion about what that actually infers. It infers the wind's moving in a straight line. Ridiculous. But that's what he'd have to say, and he did.
It's not the spoon bending, it's yourself.
Yeah, it's not the wind moving in a circle, it's you turning underneath it. No, it's not. It actually does have a circular
And
path, though. It's
I have
actually
yet
got.
to get another baller to back that up. I have no idea where he got that claim, and I've never heard another baller make it. So that's
Well,
definitely some MSU shit.
No, it's not making stuff up. It's him having a comprehension, vague though it may be, of what Coriolis really is. So when you take him through the steps of logic and what it must infer when you use a thing with an actual spin direction, like a hurricane, and say, I'm observing Coriolis effect when I look at it, we're like, well, Coriolis is not actual deflection because you're turning underneath stuff. So is that what you're saying about the wind then? And it is, yes. So it's not got a spin direction. It's a not actual deflection because you're turning underneath it. So the wind's going straight then? Yes, is the only conclusion, even though it makes no sense. So you just led him down a path of absurdity based on his own contradictions and nonsense that is to assert that something with an actual spin direction, be it water going down a drain or a hurricane, has anything to do with Coriolis effect if you're not spinning in it. It doesn't.
Exactly.
Well said.
Good morning.
Hey, good to see you. So to speak.
What's up, John?
Hey, good. Hey, good to see you.
So to speak.
Can we actually see you, or is it apparently?
Yeah, right. We got Extremistus whining in the chat about Nathan is so nasty. We're not going to go in there. Extremistus, ask Extremistus about his gas pressure and pressurized gas are different.
He actually
Have him present his case.
Say again?
I don't feel like discussing it.
I don't feel like discussing it.
Is that because we're mean extremists?
Exactly. And I don't want to talk to a bunch of meanie.
No, but I don't know who you are and I don't care. Hold on. Before you get into some old feud with QE, I don't know who you are and I don't care. Just lay it out for me. I am now intrigued, genuinely intrigued. You're saying there's a difference between pressurized gas and gas pressure? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
And not you, QE.
Yes.
Not you, QE. Please, can you explain it to us? What's the difference between pressurized gas and gas at pressure?
Pressurized gas. Gas is the noun, and pressurized is the adjective that describes the gas. Therefore, separating from, say, pressurized water or something else, as opposed to gas pressure. Pressure, I think I said it backwards, but whatever. Anyway, pressurized gas. Gas is the noun. Pressure is the adjective. Gas pressure. Pressure is the noun. Gas is the adjective.
What?
I'm still not clear. How are they different? That's the bit I need. Not how they're verbally described in terms of the text for verbs and adjectives. How are the two different things different?
As I said, I don't really want to get into it. I'm actually in the middle of something.
Okay, I would put it to you
So,
that they're not.
never mind.
Okay, well, just before you go, I would put it to you that they're not different.
Okay, they're not. That's good enough for me. We're good.
You're saying they are without giving any explanation.
No, you convinced me. They are the same thing. We're fine.
So you are actually in agreement, or are you being sarcastic?
Sure. That's my answer.
Very vague. Okay.
What the hell, man?
Wow.
A gas at pressure is the same as a pressurized gas. They're one and the same thing.
Yeah, you need a container. And I mean, it's the pressure, the gas pressing on the container, that is the pressure. Just cramming.
I was just going to ask him, can he have either of those things without a container?
It'll be a no, chocolate.
The word pressure is the important part. As is in both of them.
Extremistus? Still there?
I'm ignoring you now. So don't ask me any more questions.
I just one last question, man. Can you have either gas pressure or pressurized gas without a container? Either or.
My answer would be that you need a force of some kind, whether it's a container or some other kind of force, such as a magnetic force.
So can you show that? Can you show a magnetic force with holding gas pressure without a container? Is that something you could show us?
No.
Okay.
Alrighty then.
What other forces could that possibly be?
I don't know. I'm just making it up as I go.
If you can't show that, then how do you know that that's the
can
case?
create a containment?
Hold on, just chocolate.
If you don't know that, Extremistus, how do you know that that's the case? If you can't show that.
No, I'm making up as I go.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay, this started off with apparently you were moaning that we were mean or harsh, but we've got to the point where you conceded that you're just making stuff up. I don't really understand what's going on here.
Yes.
Maybe you can fill me in.
Kind of something between me and QE.
I gathered that.
Me and QE? Wait a second. This is what you wrote. I do like how no one is bothering to discuss anything in voice chat that's not giving Nathan Oakley what he wants, which is an argument for his audience. He has basically turned all the Globers away from voice chat by his poor behavior and abuse. At least no one is taking the bait in voice chat. How does that have anything to do with me?
I was actually referring more toward our previous discussions. And besides, you brought up the whole difference in gas pressure and pressurized gas. That's more what I was referring to.
I brought it up and you responded. I guess you're an English professor or something. But what does that have to do? See, you're bouncing around here. That doesn't have anything to do with what you just said about abuse. Now, I didn't hear Nathan or Chocolate or anyone else in here abuse you.
No, this is a civil conversation. I've heard other conversations that weren't so civil, is my point.
Okay. No, that's perfectly reasonable. I mean, the point that it normally gets, or the point it breaks down usually, is when somebody who's on the globe side of the argument has to have the conclusion laid out for them and what it implies. So, for instance, in this example, we're talking about pressurized gas or gas at pressure and its requirement for containment. Now, the reason we talk about that is because it's asserted that a sphere Earth has no containment, and therefore we would assert, based on natural law, that space is fake. If it were real, gas would fill it, and that would be exampled and described in the second law of thermodynamics. So would you concede, given that you can't have gas pressure without a container, that the sky vacuum is therefore fake?
Yes, I can see the point.
But you are indeed on the globe side and concede that space is fake?
Sure.
Well, welcome to Flat Earth. Space is fake. All the pictures that you thought you had of Earth aren't real.
Thank you. I'll enjoy the stay.
Come on now, let's be honest. You don't really agree to that. Be honest.
No, but it's what you want to hear. So
And according to you, I want an argument. So I don't. Now you're contradicting your own statement in chat. You're saying that I wanted an argument, but yet you're giving me something that you say I want, which is to agree with me even though you don't agree. So you're kind of contradicting yourself. It seems weird.
Okay, then I'm not giving you what you want. Whatever. Anyway, I'm done.
Done? We're at the point where you've conceded the sky vacuum's not real, but you now say you don't agree with that. Presumably it's that sarcasm we had before. So what do you actually think then? Do you disagree? Space still real, even though natural law violates it by a sky vacuum space that gas could fill?
Yes, that's my answer.
Excellent. Anything more than just a yes to back the idea that we've got a space that gas could fill?
That's it. Just yes.
That would assert zealotry and fundamentalism.
Okay, how about no? What happens if I answer no? Which question gets me out of this conversation? Which answer gets me out of this conversation?
Well, the answer that you gave originally,
What's the matter with you, man?
the answer you gave originally was, yeah, I understand. Based on the second law of thermodynamics, that's in the example that we're giving here, the free expansion of gas into a vacuum, easily demonstrable, entropy increase. The sky, if it were a space, it would be a space for gas to fill, and it would fill it. And now you agreed, but after said, no, well, actually, I don't agree with that. Now we're at the point, well, why? And you're saying, well, yes. Okay, well, that's not really anything other than you saying, yes, I still believe in space. But you're not giving us anything. Why would you still believe it, given that it violates natural law?
I don't know. I give up. I'm done. You win. I'm done.
Oh, well, that was really pleasant.
I
Thank
concede
you.
all.
I agree. And normally I have to yell at the fundies. Yeah, I won, didn't I? That's right. No yelling needed. Yeah, I'm really nice when people are reasonable and they accept their zealotry.
That was easy.
There you go. Maybe more people be more reasonable.
Maybe more people can accept their zealotry and that they just have a belief in sky vacuums and sphere earths and stuff. Yeah, maybe.
We can agree on that point, yes.
Excellent. Hopefully there's more globers like yourself.
Is this what the globers
I'm glad I
are
can be
to now?
It could be. It sounds like this is the step on that ladder that we never see. Now, our closest we've got is John here on the panel, right? Which is to say that you go beyond the point of anger, you go beyond the point of bargaining, you go beyond the point of depression, and onto acceptance. Yeah, I realise it's just a belief. Not a lot I can do about it. I still believe it, but I accept it. It's like, okay, well, welcome to Flat Earth then. This is a first. Amazing. No shouting needed.
Yeah, but is he genuine, Nathan? That's the thing.
Doesn't matter. He's not got a response. What's he going to do? Shower us with his cognitive dissonance? Tell us that gravity's holding the gas pressure here for us to go through for about 10 minutes that gravity's not a force? Where's he going to go? We all know that the outcome's the same. Now, even though it might be sarcastic, at a base level, the man knows what words are coming out of his mouth, right? And we're not arguing about something that doesn't really exist, in this case the sky vacuum. The guy's going, no, I don't have an argument, but I don't want to have an argument with you. I don't want to get yelled at. And other than, presumably, asserting a bit more zealotry or reasserting a point that's already been demolished, where are you going to go? Well, the answer is nowhere. Space is actually fake. The sky is not a vacuum. We'd all be dead. That's just how it is. Where else to go from there, I'm afraid, people? What do you want? A row? Yeah, there isn't one. There's no argument to be had. Now, when the globers say from the chat and sidelines like this dude, yeah, Nathan really wants to chat. Not really. I want a show. I'm a YouTuber. And I've got one. Because until the Western world does as you have done and appreciates, yeah, I don't actually have any physical evidence for a sky vacuum or pictures of Earth being a sphere from it, or evidence of Earth curve with a reified physical sphere edge horizon that's being bent with an R value that leads us not being able to measure this X marks the spot horizon that used to block things in the distance with its physicality. When you appreciate all those things, that doesn't mean the rest of the Western world does. So I'll still have a show tomorrow. But I'd much rather be doing the show like this, with lots of friends all happy, accepting that the world's not a sphere. As opposed to zealots that go round in circles for 10 hours. That doesn't make my day happy. Much as you think, with projection, that that's what I want. No, what you want is somebody who's competent to come from the globe side and prove me wrong. That's just not happening anymore. But you want to blame that on me by way of projection and say that it's something I want. It's not. It's what you want. But no one's coming to save the globe. It's dead.
That's why they're tuning in.
Yep.
Put him on mute, Nathan, so you can take him off and berate him.
Look, I don't want the anger. I'm going to wish everyone well on that note. So with that, I'll say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. Of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a name! What a lovely name!